So tonight we're going to start color. What we're going to do tonight is something called reduction or reductive color. And then next week we'll do multi-block in jigsaw. So the reduction color, it's a way to work with color just using one block. So to be working just with one block. And as the name implies, you carve into a block, ink it up, print it, and then go back into the block, cut some more, and then print it again. So you're always cutting and printing, so you're reducing the block. So by the time you're finished your last color, you won't have much left on your block. So you're reducing your block, but building up layers on your print. That's one way to look at it. So this robin, for example, was created by starting off with your lightest color. So usually you print your lightest color. There's always exceptions. So the first thing you want to do is carve out anything you want white or the color of the paper. So that'll depend on your image. You might have very little white in your image, so you don't have to do much carving at the beginning. Or there'll be a lot of white. So there. And again, usually the lightest color is printed first. You work your way up to the darkest color. And then you print this, and then you go back and you carve away anything you want to keep yellow. I've heard it being compared to doing a Ukrainian Easter egg. So if that makes sense for you, great. If it doesn't, that's okay. And on top of the yellow, we print this color. So you can see how much has been carved away compared to the two. So I've carved away everything I want to keep yellow. And we'll go through our reduction together so you can see it in person. This is just the example I'll show you. So hopefully seeing this, me doing it, and then you trying the group exercise tonight, you'll get a better handle on how it works.
The image that's pink is just carved away, it's not layered on the yellow.
No, okay. So this is in between layer. I just wanted to show the color that prints on top. So it looks pink, I guess technically it is pink, but the pink was made by blending red with a transparent base.
Oh.
So when this color sits on top of another color, the previous color shows through. So if you have a transparent red on top of the yellow, you get orange. So color theory is important. If you have any color theory, that's good. If you don't, that's okay. You can play around with color. And the layering. So a characteristic of reduction is the colors almost always sit on top of each other, so you have to consider how the colors are going to sit on each other. So if you do have like a, for example, a blue sky in your image, you want to keep it a pure blue, that might be hard to do if your first layer is yellow. So you might have to account for that when you're thinking of your layers. Because you can change the opacity and the transparency of your color, but I do find if it's a really strong base color and you try to put another color on top, it drastically change it. You're always going to have that base color coming through. So for example, if you do have like a yellow field and a blue sky and you want to keep that blue sky nice and pure, you print the blue on top of the yellow, it's always going to have a little bit of a green tint to it just because you're printing on top of the yellow. And on top of the orange, I did a transparent purple. So I went back and carved out anything I want to keep orange. And the transparent purple on top of the orange creates a brown. Then I carved away anything I want to keep brown. And I printed this transparent green to get my final layer. Done. So that's my example of reduction. So the advantage of reduction is it's really, I find it's easy to register or line up because you're just working with one block. Next week we'll do multi-block where each color has a separate block. So you have to find a way to register or line them up. So that can be a little bit tricky. Here you're working with one block. It's also a little bit faster. If anyone's seen the lino cuts, Picasso's lino cuts at the Remy, he mostly worked with reduction. He did try some multi-blocks. He found it a little too tedious. He liked just working with one block. So Because with the multi-block, you have to almost recarve the image each time. Here, you're just working off one block. The disadvantage to it, the big one, is if you make a mistake, you can't go back because you're working with the one block. So when you're printing your first layer, for example, and you're planning to do an addition of, let's say, 6 for a suite, you might start off with 10 prints because, you know, something might happen when you're printing. Your block might go crooked, it might not register properly, you might print it backwards or upside down. Things will happen, or you didn't ink it up fully. So you have to account for that because you can't go back. So try not to worry about that too much. When I teach at the university, I give students the option of doing reduction or multi-block. When I talk about reduction, a lot of people tense up because of that, because you can't go back. But I do find it's, in some ways, it's almost kind of easier for the multi-block for, like I described, easier to register, and just get into it and start carving. And it's really up to you on what you want to do with your layers. Something like this is 3 layers, reduction. And then you can go up to many layers and transparent layers. So the number of colors is up to you and depending on your image. That's one that's reduction as well.
And how many layers is that one?
You know, not that many. I think 3 or 4.
What's the maximum layer?
I don't think there is a maximum. I mean, I guess I reached the point where it's too thick, I guess. I mean, I suppose.
You ran out of block?
You run on the block? Yeah. I did like 10 or 12 layers. I'm sure there have been artists that have gone higher. So it really depends on your image. So you could do little cuts and then print and little cuts and print and then slowly build up like 30 layers and do like a gradation.
How long do you leave between?
That's a good question. Depends on the ink. The ink that we use, ideally you let it sit overnight in between printings. You can get away with doing one layer after the other. That's what I'm going to do tonight. And for your group exercise, if you want to kind of quickly go through it, and you can do 2 layers tonight. So you can do 2 layers one after the other. So you could print, carve your next layer and print the other one. That's okay, as long as you're careful with your ink. Much more than that, what happens is the ink that's on your paper will get onto your block and vice versa, and then sometimes the paper gets stuck to the block. When you pull off the paper, it'll tear and rip. So you don't want that. So ideally, you let each layer dry in between.
How long is the dry? How long is the dry?
I'd say overnight. Yeah, depending on the ink. It also depends on your layers. So the first few layers, the ink is going to be absorbed into the paper. The more layers that you do, the ink is basically just sitting on top of ink. So it's ink on top of ink, and then the drying time will slow quite a bit. So it'll be quite tacky for some time. There are dryers I can get. There's something called cobalt dryer to speed up drying time. I have personally never used it. It's very bad for you. It's quite toxic. So cobalt dryer. They use it for oil paints sometimes because oil paints take a long time to dry. So I haven't found like a safe dryer yet. That's good for you. And it can affect the way the transparent layers sit on top of each other. Sometimes it makes the colors kind of yellow. So I tend not to use dryers. I'm strictly patient. So inking your blocks could be important. So you don't want to make your ink too thick. So nice thin layers of ink. That's really important. And if they're thin enough, then they'll dry relatively quickly in between layers. Usually I print and then I take some time to figure out what I'm going to carve up anyways, so I let it dry and then keep working. This one I actually printed in all one go. This one's an old print, 2007. I don't know if anyone remembers the blizzard of 2007. There was a blizzard.
Yeah, the big skidoos.
I think it's 2007. Yeah.
Isn't that then?
Anyways, I was trapped at the university,
Charles.
so I did this. And I did this over one day. So it is possible to do multi-layers in one day if you're careful with your blending, or your inking.
I'm trying to envision how many transparent colors you like.
For
Yeah.
this, like in how many layers? Or?
Yeah.
So this one has 4.
Yeah. So 4 layers of ink and 4 layers of.
Oh, the ink. I made the colors transparent.
Oh, I got
Yeah.
it. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can control the opacity of the ink. It's there. So to start off, before we start looking at color, I'll talk about backing your lino. If you're working with wood, wood is rigid enough that it will work with this. I do find with lino, it's not a bad idea to back your lino, just because as you're carving and reducing your block will get more floppy if you kind of chew it away, and it won't sit as flat as it should. So when you're trying to line up your layers, it's going to be harder and harder to do that if your block is being reduced and it starts curving or not sitting flat. So what I like to do is back my lino with MDF. So MDF is just this stuff here, just sawdust and glue that's been pressed into a board. And I usually get, this is 1/8 inch MDF. Speedball sells pre-backed lino blocks, but the backing is like 1 inch. And I don't know why. So, I mean, it'll work, but I find it's really, really thick, so I find it harder to print. To attach your backing to your lino, I like to use contact cement. And you can get contact cement that is water soluble, so it washes with water. I don't know if anyone's used the traditional contact cement before. It's quite has quite an odor to it. It's not very good for you. So this is the healthier version of that. You can get it from Home Depot. I've noticed in the past year I haven't been able to find it, so I've just been using the stuff that we bought the previous year in the printmaking studio at the university. I've checked on Amazon. There's another brand, so I might try that out. But, so for contact cement, you're just gonna put some on the backing board. Doesn't matter
Is there
which side.
one side or other? And do
For the
you
backing
just
board,
about-
no.
Just one.
Both sides are smooth,
Okay.
and both are the same size, so I pre-cut them. With MDF, I used a table saw to cut it. If you don't have a table saw, you can score it with a knife multiple times, and it will snap. It just takes more work. So. Like so. And then you want to put the contact cement on the back, so the burlap side of your lino. I usually use a foam brush, but I already have in my hand. The brush can be washed and probably used a few times before it gets too gluey to be used, so throw it out. If you get some of the contact cement on the front of the lino, that's okay, it rubs off, so you don't have to worry about damaging the front of your lino with glue. So it'll look like that. And then you let it dry. When it dries, it goes clear. And then just clear 2 down. And then when they're both dry, both surfaces are dry, then you can carefully, I like to line up 2 sides. And when they come into contact, they stick. So now instead of a floppy piece of lino, you have a rigid piece of lino. That'll stay that way no matter how much you cut.
So for the wood, I don't have to do this way. Right?
No, because wood is already pretty.
Only
so.
lino cut.
Yeah, I would recommend it. I have done it without this, like some of my geese I showed you at that first class, or that magpie. It worked, but it was a pain to line up and run through the press because by the time it was finished, it was kind of like curved and wavy. So it can be done. This is probably a better option, just because it is rigid, so you don't have to worry about how much you cut.
If you were using like the blocks that you have shaped to whatever the image is,
Yeah.
would you shape the backing board, or would you,
You
just
could.
do it on like rectangular?
Yeah, if you have
Like a jigsaw or something.
if you have a nice saw like a squirrel saw or something like that, you could try that. Yeah. Yeah.
Or would you just, could you just do it on like a rectangular piece, and then would it be low enough that it wouldn't transfer?
Yeah, you could. Inking it up though, you'll probably get bits of ink in there, so yeah. It's possible if you're careful with your inking. For the contact cement, just for your own knowledge, make sure the lip of the container is clean. And this is clean too, because if they both have contact cement on them and you put it on top, then it glues pretty solidly. And then you have to take a drill and drill. I've done that before. To open it up.
Does it have to be contact cement? Can it be like well-born?
This is what I like to use, but if you can find any kind of glue that puts them together, then that's
Okay.
great. This is nice because it's pretty user-friendly and straightforward to use. And like I said, it washes with water if you get on your hands or on your table. And it rubs off nicely on the...
You haven't tried using well-born, right?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. And then you can put your image on your block. So for tonight, I mentioned last class, I took images from seed packets. So I've pre-transferred them for you, so you can try after I show the demo, trying to do a 2-layer reduction print. So they're pre-cut for you. I've got sunflowers, radishes, carrots, etc. That way you can try the color without making a huge commitment to the image. If it doesn't work out, it's okay. If it works out, great. So, I don't know which one to choose. Go with the carrots. Some carrots. So you can do a photocopy transfer. The image won't transfer onto your paper. That works. You could draw on your block. I wouldn't use pencil. The pencil has a tendency to transfer onto your paper, depending what color you're using. So if you're using like a transparent yellow and you ink up a block that has a bunch of pencils on it, the graphite will actually transfer onto your paper. It's not a big deal if you're planning to cover those areas that you've drawn with black at the very end. Then you can probably get away with it. It might dirty up some of your ink though. I probably wouldn't use the Conte transfer paper just because we're going back to that block over and over again. So by the time you print the first layer, your drawing is going to be gone and then you're going to have to redraw it. So the transfer works really well. I'd probably recommend that mostly. You can also draw out your image with pencil crayon. The wax in the pencil crayon doesn't transfer. So you can do a drawing pencil crayon, and that's what I did with the robin. So with the robin, I didn't do a transfer at all. I just drew on the block with the pencil crayon. So you want something that doesn't transfer onto your block. Alrighty, so we have a range of color that you can use. Along with the color, we have something called extender. So the extender is our transparent base. So you can make your colors as transparent or as opaque as you like. And that's important when you're working with layers of color. So I have a tendency to work with transparent colors. You don't have to, but I like the way the layers interact with each other. Do that. But sometimes a nice solid color on top of another color is really dramatic and looks really good. So the first thing you want to do is carve out anything you want to keep white. So do a quick little job.
I have a hard time thinking, not backwards, but, you know.
Yep.
As white is white, and white is black.
So I just carved out the highlights of the carrots. I can do more if you want, but just to speed things up for the demo. So first thing you do is carve out anything you want white, or the color of your paper. And then you start with your lightest color. So I'm going to do an orange. Got my paper. Any questions so far
What's the brand name of the paint called?
of this?
Yeah.
Oh, Cranfield.
CREN, right?
Cranfield. Cranfield.
Okay, Cranfield. Okay.
Yeah. So it's the same ink that we've been using for the black, just with color. And there's different kinds of colored inks you can get. I like to use this because it washes with water and it has a long drying time, so you can work with it. Speedball does make different colors, but it does dry quite quickly. At the university, we use a rubber-based ink called Banson. It's a commercial printing ink, so they use it for commercial printing presses, and we just use it in the studio for printing woodblock. The advantage of that is it dries pretty slowly, so you have lots of time to work with it. The disadvantage is if you make your ink too thick, it takes forever to dry. Make it weeks. There's oil-based inks, traditional oil-based inks. You can even use oil paint. So you've seen Jacob's show at the Craft Council. He used a lot of oil paint. So he actually used a transparent etching base with oil paint, because he found that worked the best for his images for the scale that he was working in. So it doesn't even have to be ink. So that's what the transparent base looks like. Not very transparent. And then when you take ink out of the can, if you can, try to skim from the top. Most of the inks are in tubes. I just got big containers of black and transparent base, because we use a lot of it. So I'm recording this, and this will be on YouTube. I've also recorded a few videos in my studio with a bird's eye point of view, so you can actually watch me mix colors and carve, which might be easier to see. So I'll post those, I'll give those links to you as well. So that's what my palette paint looks like. And then start mixing. If you're gonna do a transparent color, I usually add color to my transparent base. Just because if you end up making a big pile of solid color and you'll want to make it transparent, you'll have to use lots and lots of transparent base to make it transparent. So if your intention is to make it transparent, start with a transparent base, add bits of color at a time until you get to where you want to for your color. And if you mix a color and you want to use it later, you can save it in saran wrap. That's usually what I do, is I'll just fold a piece of saran wrap, put my ink in it, and wrap it up, and then you can save it, or an airtight container.
How long will it keep?
I've had it for like a few weeks.
Oh.
Yeah. Depending on how you seal it. Like an orange. When ink is in a pile like this, it always looks darker than what it is. So what I'd like to do is grab a scrap piece of paper and do a drawdown. So basically I take my palette knife, I just scrape down. So it'll print closer to this. So it's quite different from this. It'll probably be a touch darker because I'll be going over the block a few times, but so I'd recommend doing a test before going ahead and printing. Or if you want to throw caution to the wind, you can do that too. You know, surprises and stuff. That's okay. I'll make it a little bit darker. So there's a lot you can do with the color, just like painting. You can play around with like different layers of transparency. So some layers might be more transparent than others. You might want to play around with cool colors and warm colors. It's always nice to do. So the colors mixed up. So for tonight's class, we're just going to do a really simple form of registration. Next week we'll do something a little more complicated. So I just made a registration sheet, just like I showed you a couple weeks ago. So again, I marked out one corner for the paper and then one corner for the block. And I put that underneath the mylar. And then I got my paper cut, so I'm just using cardstock. And then I'll start inking up. Maybe I'll use it for my color mixing. So inking's the same as black and white. Differences. So we're working with, if you're working with transparent colors like I am here, the size of the roller is important. So with black ink or a solid color, you can kind of fan out your rolling to get an even layer. With transparent layers, if you go over your block and your roller is too small, what will happen is you'll get kind of a repeat image. So if the diameter of your roller is smaller than the length of your block, what will happen is the image will kind of transfer on the roller a little bit, and then when it's gone past the diameter of the roller, but you still have block left to print, that image will transfer onto your block, if that makes sense. Kinda? So when I ink up,
Yep.
here, wherever I didn't cut kind of stays on the block. It kind of transfers a bit. But if my rollers, the diameter doesn't go all the way the length of my roller, then the image that's been kind of printed on my roller transfers onto the block. So you get kind of a ghost image. So in the ideal world, if you want to make large blocks, you get a bigger roller.
So it's more of the stain sticking onto the roller. Is that what you're saying?
It's more like the image will transfer.
The image is not considered stain, right?
It kind of stains. It's kind of like,
It's like the toner is coming off onto the roller.
no, more like the.
Oh, where you cut.
Where I've cut.
Got it.
So this is a terrible color to demonstrate this. Maybe the next one will be better. When I ink up here, it's fresh.
Yep.
This part where I've cut, the ink will stay on the roller because it's
Not transferring.
not transferring. And because the roller is a little bit smaller than the block should be, that part of that image that is still on the roller will transfer back onto the block. You don't notice it when you do like a solid color like black because it's solid and you won't see it. When you do a transparent layer, if it's really transparent, you'll see that ghost image from your brayer that's too small. So to help with that, you can kind of fan out your brayer and then ink up in different directions, and that'll help reduce that ghost. Or you can get bigger rollers, but bigger rollers get more expensive. And then speedball really makes only this size in terms of diameter. So I do have a larger brayer at home that I'll bring in, so if you want to try and work with a bigger one, you can.
So the actual roller
The diameter.
has to be big, okay.
Yeah, ideally this would be bigger than the length of your block. So when you ink up, you can do it in one pass without repeating the image on your block. But if you fan it out, it should be okay. Hopefully that kind of makes sense. And then, if you're doing a proper edition, I'd recommend using a piece of newsprint. I'm just gonna go jump onto my cardstock just for the demo. Put that down. And then you print your, how many of the first layer you want. So again, you can't go back, so if you do make a mistake, then you have one less print in your edition. So if you're planning for an edition of 6, you might do 10 or 12, just to account for mistakes. Do that for your first layer. So again, I would do one or two on newsprint to kind of build up ink on your block before I go on to good paper. And then I go ahead and print as many orange prints as I want to, more than I need. And then you can start carving your next color. So usually what I like to do is take a piece of newsprint and just strip off the ink. After I'm finished printing my first layer, or whatever layer you're working on, and then start carving. So, I'm carving now will be orange. I'll use a big one. Depending on your image, if you have something that's pretty clear, just go ahead and carve. Usually when I'm carving the next layer, I'll take a pencil crown and kind of map out what I want to carve, just to keep track of what I want to carve. So it's not a bad idea to have some pencil crowns on hand to do that. So, quick, next layer. And then you can figure out your next color. The carrots will be a little rough looking, but so for my next layer, I'm going to do a blend. So you can create blends with relief printing. So you can go from one color to another with one go. You don't have to, but I'll do it for the demonstration. It is really nice to do when you feel like you need to. How's everyone with color theory? On the whole- Right, layering colors, I guess comes with practice. Kind of basic things like, you know, if you put a blue on top of yellow, like a transparent blue on top of yellow, it'll make a green. So it's basic colors there. Working with complementary colors is really nice. Everyone familiar with complementary colors? Kinda. So if you have a yellow and you want to add shading to it, instead of using black, you can mix up like a transparent purple on top of the yellow. I find it looks more natural than trying to put a black on top of it. So yeah, yellow, purple, red, green, blue, orange for your complementary colors.
Okay, so those are opposite each other on the, like if you had a color wheel, then they would be opposite
Yeah,
each
they'd be
other.
opposite
Okay,
each other,
okay.
So I'm going to do a blend. I'm going to go for like a turquoisey color that'll be solid with no transparent base, and to a purple that'll be very transparent. Because it can.
Lucky you.
Lucky me.
Yeah.
So blends are nice. You can do more than one color. As you stick to two, but you can even use a color, so you can go from like a blue to a transparent if you wanted to. Nice fades. Purple. So color, you go through a lot of knives, a lot of space. The blue on its own, at least this particular blue, is quite transparent. So if you want to make your colors more transparent or more opaque, so they sit on top of each other more, you could try adding opaque white. So we do have an opaque white, a solid white, and that'll help color sit on top of the previous layer. Just keep in mind, if you add a lot of white, it'll make your color more pastel-y, which can be good or bad, depending on what color you want. And green color.
Oh, that's nice.
Oh, we'll see what. Yep, I'm expanding. I have no room. So if you want to do a blend, you can take first color, put it across like that, and then take the second color, put it next to it. So it's up to you. If you want to blend that's mostly purple with just a little bit of green at the end, you can do that, or you can keep them even. Just depends on how much of each color you want. And then when they roll up, usually you roll up back and forth. With a blend, what I'm going to do is dip into my two colors, go back, and then kind of go a little bit of an angle this way, and a little bit of an angle that way. And that way the two colors will start blending together. So as you continue to work with the blend throughout your edition, it will change slightly because you're printing by hand. So usually you find there's a difference between the first print you do with the blend to the last one. The colors get more blended together just because you're rolling by hand and it's going to vary a little bit. So, does the pollen come out? It'll look like that. Be careful when you're rolling up that you don't turn your roller and go this direction, or then the blend will cease to be a blend. Take your block. So to help keep your block consistent, either with a marker or some tape, you can mark where you place your block down on your mylar or your table surface, just so you know you place it in the same spot every time. So I'm just marking one corner with some tape. And then with the blend, with your roller, if you wanted to, you can mark the edge of where the roller goes down, so it's always going to be in the same spot. That'll help you with consistency. With the blend, you can decide which direction you want to go in. So if I want the green on the bottom, purple up top, and then roll up like that. If I want green on one side, purple on the other, go this way. You can also do a diagonal, just keep it consistent. I'll start looking like that. Alright, so that's our next layer. So for registration, tonight we're going to do it by taking our paper face up, so print side up. Then we're going to take our block and plop it down. So you have to make sure you got the right direction. So sometimes I will write on the back of the block up, and then mark the paper with pencil up. Sometimes if you're in a rush or you're printing late in the evening, you might forget that you print it backwards. So basically you're just lining up the edges of your print with the edges of your block. Press down. And the thing you have to do is flip it over. So if you're not careful, it could slip. But it's the easiest way to register. You don't have to do any kind of registration system. Next week, I'll go through another way to register. That makes sense. And then you start printing. to it. So those are my original colors. So the green's more opaque, so it kind of sits on the orange more, but you can see how the orange affected that purple, changed it. Then I go ahead and print all these layers and go back and carve anything I want to keep the blend and do my next layer. So you're constantly reducing your block and then building up your image on your paper. And that's reduction, or reductive printing.